I am Amanda Wilson, 34 years old, and a senior architect at one of New York's top firms. After working myself to the bone for over a decade, I finally bought my dream penthouse in Manhattan last year. Despite my parents always favoring my younger sister Brianna, we maintained a close relationship. I was genuinely excited when she announced her engagement, eager to help with her special day. Little did I know that her wedding would turn into my worst nightmare ending, with my mother slapping me across the face and me plotting a revenge that would change our family forever. If you are watching this, let me know where you are from in the comments, and if you have ever dealt with family betrayal, hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey. I grew up in a modest brick house in a middle-class neighborhood just outside of Boston. Our family of four seemed normal from the outside, but inside our walls, the favoritism was undeniable. My parents, Catherine and Thomas Wilson, always had a special place in their hearts for Brianna, my sister, who is 7 years younger than me. From the time Brianna was born, she became the center of our family universe. While other parents tried to hide their preferences, mine made little effort to conceal theirs. For every piano recital of mine they missed due to work commitments, they would take days off to attend Brianna's school plays. My academic achievements were expected, her average grades celebrated. This pattern continued throughout our childhood and only intensified as we grew older. By the time I graduated high school as valedictorian, I knew I would have to make my own way in life. My parents contributed minimally to my college education, explaining that they needed to save for Brianna's future. I worked 3 jobs while maintaining a full course load at the state university. I served coffee at dawn, tutored other students in the afternoons, and waited tables on weekends. Despite the exhaustion, I graduated with honors with a degree in architecture. Meanwhile, Brianna received a fully funded education at a private university. She changed her major 4 times, took a year off to find herself in Europe, and eventually dropped out altogether. Each time she changed direction, my parents supported her emotionally and financially, calling her journey brave and inspirational. After college, I moved to New York City with nothing but 2 suitcases and boundless determination. I started at the bottom of Marcus & Associates, a prestigious architectural firm making coffee runs and organizing blueprints. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with a kitchenette barely big enough to fit a microwave. For 5 years, I worked 60-hour weeks, took night classes to earn additional certifications, and saved every penny possible. My hard work eventually paid off. I climbed the ranks from junior assistant to project manager to senior architect. Each promotion came with long nights, canceled vacations, and relentless dedication. By the time I turned 33, I had saved enough for a down payment on my dream home, a stunning 2-bedroom penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The day I signed those papers was the proudest moment of my life, a testament to my perseverance and self-reliance. Throughout those years, Brianna bounced between careers. She tried fashion, merchandising, interior design, social media influencing, and yoga instruction. None lasted more than 8 months. Our parents subsidized her rent in trendy neighborhoods, paid off her credit card debt multiple times, and never questioned her choices. When I would call home, conversations inevitably shifted to Brianna's latest adventure, regardless of my professional milestones. Despite this imbalance, I maintained a relationship with my sister. Behind the entitlement fostered by our parents, Brianna had a good heart. We met for brunch when she visited New York, exchanged birthday gifts, and called on holidays. I accepted that our lives had taken different paths, and tried not to harbor resentment. Then Brianna met James Blackwood, the son of a hotel chain owner. Within 6 months of dating, he proposed with a 4-carat diamond ring. Suddenly, my social media was flooded with engagement photo shoots, ring close-ups, and captions about fairy tales coming true. I called her immediately to congratulate her, genuinely happy that she had found someone who made her happy. James seemed kind and clearly adored my sister. His family wealth meant he could provide the lifestyle to which Brianna had become accustomed. During our occasional double dates with my boyfriend Michael, James was always respectful and interested in my career. I appreciated that he valued Brianna for who she was, rather than trying to change her. When Brianna asked me to help with wedding planning, I agreed despite my hectic work schedule. I imagined this would be a chance to strengthen our bond as sisters and perhaps even bridge the gap with my parents. I blocked off weekends, adjusted project deadlines, and prepared to be the supportive big sister I had always tried to be. The first red flag appeared when Brianna announced her wedding party. Our cousin Stephanie would be the maid of honor, not me. While trying to hide my hurt, Brianna explained that I was too busy with work to handle the responsibilities. Before I could process this, she added that she still expected me to help with vendor meetings, dress fittings, and financial contributions. It stung, but I swallowed my pride and agreed. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a pattern that would culminate in the most humiliating moment of my life. As the wedding date grew closer, Brianna transformed from my sweet sister into someone I barely recognized. The term bridezilla felt invented for her. What started as occasional texts asking for venue suggestions evolved into daily demands for my time, money, and emotional energy. Every weekend for 6 months, I took the train from New York to Boston to attend cake tastings, floral arrangements, and venue tours. Despite not being the maid of honor, I found myself handling tasks that should have fallen to Stephanie. When I mentioned this to my mother, Catherine, she dismissed my concerns. Catherine looked at me with that familiar expression of disappointment. "Your sister is under a lot of pressure, Amanda. This is the biggest day of her life. You can manage a few extra responsibilities with your organizational skills." Those organizational skills apparently extended to my checkbook as well. Though never explicitly stated, I was expected to finance significant portions of the wedding. I paid for the bridal shower, the rehearsal dinner, and the wedding day transportation. Each time the request came disguised as temporary assistance. "The venue needs a deposit today, but James's trust fund distribution doesn't come through until next week," Brianna would explain. "Can you cover it? We will pay you back right away." The repayments never materialized. When I gently reminded Brianna about the thousands of dollars I had fronted, she looked genuinely confused. "But you make so much money at your job," she said, as if my financial success obligated me to subsidize her choices. "Besides, Mom and Dad have already contributed so much. It is only fair that you help too." The inequity was glaring. Our parents had liquidated some investments to pay for the ceremony and reception, which were growing increasingly extravagant. Brianna had selected the grand ballroom at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, a venue that typically booked 2 years in advance, but had mysteriously become available for her summer wedding. The flowers were being flown in from 3 different countries. The guest list had ballooned to 300 people, many of whom were business associates of James's family rather than actual friends. Through it all, I maintained my composure. My boyfriend Michael noticed the toll it was taking. After a particularly draining weekend of wedding preparations, I returned to New York exhausted and frustrated. Michael listened as I vented about the latest demands while he made us dinner in my penthouse kitchen. "Amanda, you know this isn't normal, right?" he said, sliding a glass of wine across the counter to me. "Your family treats you like an ATM with legs." I laughed at his description, but the truth in his words stung. "They are still my family," I replied weakly. Michael looked at me with concern in his eyes. "Family doesn't treat family this way. You deserve better." His words stayed with me, especially after the bridal shower incident. The event was held at an upscale restaurant with 30 guests in attendance. During the gift opening, I presented Brianna with a crystal vase from Tiffany that had cost nearly $1,000. She thanked me quickly before moving on to the next gift, a kitchen mixer from our aunt. Later, as guests mingled over champagne, I overheard my mother talking to her friend Susan. "Amanda bought that vase instead of the espresso machine on the registry," she said with a sigh. "Always has to do things her way. At least she contributed something, I suppose, with how busy she keeps herself with work." The comment cut deep. My professional success, achieved through years of sacrifice and determination, was consistently framed as a character flaw rather than an accomplishment. According to my family's narrative, my career focus made me selfish, unavailable, and difficult. As the shower continued, Brianna and James began discussing their housing situation. They were currently living in James's downtown apartment but wanted something larger now that they were getting married. "We have been looking at properties in Beacon Hill," James mentioned to the group. "But the market is so competitive right now. Plus nothing feels quite right," Brianna added. "Everything needs so much work or lacks the amenities we want." Something in their tone made me uncomfortable, though I couldn't quite place why. That evening, as I packed my overnight bag to return to New York, I found myself questioning whether all my efforts were actually bringing our family closer together, or simply reinforcing unhealthy patterns. Despite these doubts, I remained committed to supporting Brianna's wedding. I told myself that once the stress of planning was over, things would return to normal. Our family might even appreciate the sacrifices I had made to ensure her special day was perfect. I couldn't have been more wrong. The day before the wedding arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures, perfect weather for the garden rehearsal dinner planned for that evening. I took a half day from work and caught an early train to Boston, arriving at my parents' house by 2 in the afternoon to help with last-minute preparations. I let myself in using the spare key, calling out to announce my arrival. When no one responded, I assumed they might be in the backyard setting up for the family lunch that would precede the rehearsal. As I moved through the foyer toward the kitchen, I heard voices coming from the living room. I was about to enter when I caught a fragment of conversation that stopped me in my tracks. "Amanda should be helping more with all of this," my mother was saying, her voice tinged with frustration. "She has the resources. I don't understand why she is being so difficult." I froze, my hand on the doorframe. Through the crack between the door and jamb, I could see my parents seated on the sofa. Across from them sat Brianna and James, looking uncharacteristically serious. "Have you asked her directly?" James inquired. "Sometimes these things just need to be addressed head-on." My father nodded. "We were thinking after the wedding would be the right time, once everything has settled down." "Ask me what directly?" I wondered, my curiosity overcoming my initial hurt at my mother's comment. "I just worry about the timing," Brianna sighed. "The housing market is so competitive right now. If we wait too long, we might lose our chance at finding something suitable." "Well, speak of the devil," my mother said as she spotted me in the doorway. "Amanda, come join us. We were just talking about the wedding." I entered the room with a forced smile, pretending I hadn't overheard anything. "Sorry I am late. The train had some delays leaving New York." "No worries, honey," my father said, his tone noticeably warmer than it had been moments before. "We are just having a little family chat before things get busy." I took a seat in the armchair adjacent to the sofa, aware of a strange tension in the air. "What were you all discussing?" There was an awkward pause before James cleared his throat. "Actually, we were talking about housing. Brianna and I have been looking for months, but it has been challenging to find something that meets our needs in Boston." "The market is crazy right now," I offered sympathetically. "Even in New York, prices keep climbing." "Speaking of your place in New York," my mother interjected, her voice deceptively casual. "That penthouse of yours must feel awfully empty with just you living there." I blinked, unsure where this was going. "Not really. I have my home office in the second bedroom, and the open floor plan works perfectly for entertaining." "But you are just one person," she continued. "All that space for just you while Brianna and James are struggling to find a suitable home to start their family." The implication hung in the air for a moment before I fully comprehended what was being suggested. "Wait," I said slowly. "What exactly are you saying?" My father leaned forward, adopting his business negotiation posture. "Amanda, we have been thinking. Your sister is getting married, starting a new chapter in life. They need a stable home, something spacious, and in a good location. Your penthouse would be perfect for them." My mother finished as if this were the most reasonable suggestion in the world. "You could easily find another place, something smaller, more appropriate for a single professional." I stared at them, waiting for someone to laugh and reveal this was all an elaborate joke. No one did. "You want me to give Brianna and James my penthouse?" I finally managed to ask. "The home I worked for 10 years to afford, the property I am still paying a mortgage on." "We know it is a big ask," James said, looking at least somewhat uncomfortable, "but we would make it worth your while. My family has connections with real estate developers. We could help you find something else." "Something else," I repeated numbly. "You want me to give up my home that I bought with my own money so that you two can have it, and in exchange, you will help me find something else. Something smaller and more appropriate for me." Brianna nodded eagerly, completely missing or ignoring my incredulity. "It would be perfect. Your place is amazing, and it would save us so much time searching. Plus, you are always working anyway. You barely use all that space. I felt as though I had stepped into an alternate reality where my family's entitlement had reached new, unfathomable heights. Let me get this straight, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. You want me to give up my home, which I saved for years, to afford, worked countless overtime hours to pay for, and spent months furnishing to my taste, so that you can have it because… Why exactly? Because Brianna is getting married, and I am single. Don't be so dramatic, Amanda, my mother sighed. We are talking about family here. Family supports each other. You make enough money to buy another place. Brianna and James need to start their lives together somewhere nice. And what about my life? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. What about everything I have worked for? It is just a property, my father said dismissively. Your career is your priority anyway. Your sister is starting a family. That takes precedence. The casual way they devalued everything I had worked for left me speechless. In their eyes, my achievements, my sacrifices, my very life choices were somehow less valid than Brianna's because she was getting married. Absolutely not, I said firmly, standing up from my chair. I am not giving up my home. Not now, not after the wedding, not ever. I cannot believe you would even ask me this. The shock on their faces would have been comical if the situation weren't so hurtful. They had genuinely expected me to agree to sacrifice my home on the altar of Brianna's happiness, as I had sacrificed so many other things throughout our lives. Amanda, my mother, began, her tone shifting to one of disappointment. Don't be selfish. This isn't like you. Selfish, I repeated, a lifetime of suppressed resentment bubbling to the surface. I have paid for half this wedding. I have taken time off work to help with every detail. I have supported Brianna through every career change, every relationship, every crisis. And now I am selfish because I won't give her my home. Brianna's eyes filled with tears, her go-to response whenever she didn't get her way. I thought you would be happy to help us. You always said you wanted me to be happy. I do want you to be happy, I replied, my voice breaking. But not at the expense of everything I have worked for. There are limits, Brianna. We are very disappointed in you, Amanda, my father said coldly. Very disappointed indeed. Those words, which once would have devastated me now, only fueled my anger. Well, I am disappointed too. I am disappointed that after everything I have done, you still see me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited for Brianna's benefit. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, tears threatening to spill over. Behind me, I could hear my mother calling my name, but I didn't look back. As I climbed into my rental car, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely insert the key into the ignition. For the first time in my life, I seriously considered not attending my sister's wedding. But some stubborn part of me refused to give them the satisfaction of painting me as the villain who ruined Brianna's special day. So I drove to my hotel, checked in, and cried until I had no tears left. That night I called Michael and told him everything. His anger on my behalf was validating. Do not go to that wedding, Amanda, he urged. These people do not deserve you. I have to, I replied. If I don't, they will use it against me forever. I will go, I will smile, I will play my part one last time. But after this, things are going to change. I fell asleep that night with a strange sense of clarity. The wedding would proceed as planned, but my relationship with my family would never be the same again. The morning of Brianna's wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect June day that seemed to mock my inner turmoil. I woke up in my hotel room with puffy eyes and a hollow feeling in my chest, but I was determined to maintain my composure. Today wasn't about me or my feelings. It was about getting through the next 12 hours with dignity. I arrived at the Fairmont Copley Plaza at 9 in the morning as requested. The historic hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a floral wonderland with white roses and peonies cascading from every surface. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead and champagne fountains stood ready for the reception. The opulence was breathtaking, a testament to the combined financial efforts of my parents, and unwillingly myself. In the bridal suite, Brianna was already surrounded by her bridesmaids, hairstylists, and makeup artists. She looked up when I entered, a moment of uncertainty, crossing her face before she smiled tentatively. "You came," she said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Of course I did," I replied, setting down the garment bag containing my dress. "I said I would be here." An awkward silence fell between us, the events of yesterday hanging in the air unaddressed. Before either of us could speak further, our mother swept into the room in a flurry of perfume and nervous energy. "Amanda, there you are," she said, as if we hadn't parted on terrible terms just hours before. "The florist needs someone to check the centerpieces. Can you handle that while I help Brianna with her veil?" And just like that, we slipped into our familiar roles. I handled logistical issues, directed vendors, and solved last-minute crises while the rest of the family focused on Brianna. It was easier this way to busy myself with tasks, rather than dwell on the hurt and betrayal still fresh in my mind. By the time the ceremony began at 4 o'clock, everything was perfect. I sat in the front row smiling appropriately as Brianna walked down the aisle on our father's arm. She looked beautiful in her designer gown, and James's face lit up when he saw her. Despite everything, a part of me was happy for her. She had found someone who adored her, who could give her the life she wanted. I just wished it didn't have to come at my expense. The reception that followed was lavish by any standard. 300 guests dined on a 5-course meal while a string quartet played softly in the background. Champagne flowed freely, and the dance floor quickly filled after the bride and groom's first dance. I mingled as expected, accepting congratulations from relatives who assumed, as the older sister, that I must have played a significant role in planning the event. "Such a beautiful wedding," our great-aunt Margaret gushed. "You must have worked so hard to help put this together." "Brianna had a very specific vision," I replied diplomatically. "I am just happy it all came together for her." I was at the bar getting a much-needed glass of wine when my mother appeared at my side, her smile fixed, but her eyes calculating. "We need to talk," she said, taking my elbow and steering me toward a quiet corner of the ballroom. "About yesterday." I took a large sip of wine, steeling myself. "There's nothing to discuss. I am not giving up my penthouse. End of story." "Amanda, be reasonable," she hissed, glancing around to ensure no one was within earshot. "Your sister and James need a place to live, a proper place to start their family. Your father and I have already discussed it, and we think this is the best solution for everyone." "The best solution for everyone except me," I pointed out. "Have you even considered what you're asking? That's my home, Mother. My home that I worked for years to afford." "And you can afford another one," she insisted. "You make more than enough money with that job of yours. Brianna and James have their whole lives ahead of them. They need this." "So do I," I replied firmly. My answer is still no. As we argued, I noticed several guests nearby, beginning to take notice of our heated discussion. My mother noticed too and lowered her voice, though her eyes flashed with growing anger. "I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this," she said. "After everything your father and I have done for you." I nearly choked on my wine. "Done for me? What exactly have you done for me, Mother? I put myself through college. I built my career from nothing. I bought my own home. What have you ever done except favor Brianna at every turn?" Her face flushed red. "How dare you speak to me like that? We raised you. We supported you." "No," I said, years of pent-up resentment finally breaking free. "You raised Brianna. I was just the responsible one who never needed anything because I learned early on not to expect it." By now, a small circle of space had formed around us as guests pretended not to eavesdrop while doing exactly that. I knew I should walk away, that this was neither the time nor the place for this confrontation, but years of silence had finally reached their breaking point. "Amanda Jean Wilson," my mother said, using my full name as she had when I was a child in trouble. "You will not ruin your sister's wedding day with your selfishness. Now, we can discuss the details of the penthouse situation tomorrow, but I expect you to—" "There is nothing to discuss," I interrupted. "I'm not giving Brianna my home. Not tomorrow, not ever. And the fact that you would even ask shows just how little you respect me or anything I've accomplished." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. My mother's face contorted with rage, her carefully applied makeup doing nothing to mask her fury. Before I could react, her hand flew up and connected with my cheek in a slap that echoed through the now silent corner of the ballroom. The physical pain was nothing compared to the shock and humiliation that washed over me. I stood frozen, my hand rising to my stinging cheek as dozens of wedding guests stared in horrified silence. "Don't be selfish," my mother hissed loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Family comes first, Amanda. You've always been too self-centered to understand that." Through my shock, I registered Brianna rushing over her white gown, swishing as she moved. For a moment, I thought she was coming to my defense. Instead, she took our mother's arm. "Mom, please," she said, not even looking at me. "You're making a scene. This is my wedding day." "Not, are you okay, Amanda? Not, Mom, how could you? But you're making a scene." Even now, in this horrible moment, Brianna's only concern was for herself. I looked around at the stunned faces of the guests, at my father, who stood nearby, making no move to intervene, at James, who at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Something inside me broke and reformed in that moment, a clarity cutting through years of manipulation and guilt. Without a word, I set down my wineglass, turned on my heel, and walked out of the ballroom. Behind me, I could hear murmurs beginning to rise, the unmistakable sound of gossip being born. Let them talk. I was done caring what any of them thought. In the hotel lobby, I ran into Michael, who had just arrived, planning to join me for the reception portion of the evening as my +1. "Amanda, what's wrong?" he asked immediately, noticing my red cheek and tearful eyes. "We're leaving," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Now." In the car, as Michael drove us back to my hotel, I finally let the tears fall. Between sobs, I told him everything: the slap, the humiliation, the years of being treated as less than my sister. "I'm so sorry," he said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "What they did is unforgivable." I wiped my eyes, a strange calm beginning to replace my hurt. You know what the worst part is? They'll never understand what they did wrong. In their minds, I'm the villain in this story. The selfish older sister who wouldn't sacrifice for the family. "So what are you going to do?" Michael asked as we pulled up to the hotel. I stared out at the Boston skyline, my hometown that had never truly felt like home. "I'm going to stop playing by their rules," I said finally. "It's time they learned they can't treat me this way anymore. It's time for consequences." That night, as I lay in bed unable to sleep, I began to formulate a plan. Not for revenge in the petty sense, but for justice. For boundaries that could never again be crossed. For the first time in my life, I would put myself first, and my family would learn exactly what that meant. The week following the wedding was eerily quiet at first. I returned to New York on Sunday, took a personal day on Monday, and tried to process the emotional tornado I had just experienced. By Tuesday, however, my phone began lighting up with messages from my family. From my mother: "Your behavior was unacceptable. You owe us all an apology." From my father: "Call your mother. She's upset about what happened." From Brianna: "I can't believe you would cause such drama at my wedding. Everyone was talking about it instead of focusing on me and James." Not a single message acknowledged the slap or the unreasonable demand that had precipitated it. In their revised version of events, I was the antagonist who had disrupted an otherwise perfect day with my selfishness. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I made an appointment with Dr. Rachel Winters, a therapist I had seen briefly after a particularly stressful project at work the previous year. "What you're describing is a classic family dynamic," Dr. Winters said after I recounted the wedding disaster. "The golden child versus the scapegoat. Your sister has been positioned as the golden child who can do no wrong, while you've been cast as the scapegoat, expected to sacrifice and support without recognition." But why, I asked the question that had haunted me for years. What did I do to deserve this role? "Nothing," she replied firmly. "Often these dynamics are established early and become self-perpetuating. The more responsible and self-sufficient you became, the more your parents could focus their attention and resources on your sister. Your success became almost inconvenient to the family narrative." Her words struck a chord. My achievements had never fit neatly into my family's story, where Brianna was the star and I was at best a supporting character. "So what do I do now?" I asked. "Cut them off completely?" Dr. Winters leaned back in her chair. "That's entirely up to you. Some people find that establishing firm boundaries is sufficient. Others determine that distance is necessary for their well-being. The important thing is that you make this decision based on what's healthiest for you, not out of anger or a desire for retribution. I left the session with a clearer understanding of my family dynamics, but still unsure of my next steps. The next day, I met my friend Danielle for lunch. As a corporate attorney, she had a pragmatic perspective I valued. "They wanted your penthouse," she repeated incredulously, after I told her the story. "The one you're still paying a mortgage on. What planet are these people living on?" "Planet Brianna," I said wryly, "where everything revolves around her needs and wants." Danielle shook her head. "There's something not adding up here, Amanda. Your sister is marrying into a wealthy family. Why would they be so desperate for your place specifically?" Her question sparked my curiosity. That evening, I began researching James's family, the Blackwoods. While they did own a small chain of boutique hotels, recent news articles suggested they were facing financial difficulties. Several properties had been sold in the past year, and there were rumors of overextension and mismanagement. Further digging revealed that James himself wasn't as financially secure as he appeared. His position at his father's company was largely ceremonial, and his salary was modest compared to the lifestyle he maintained. Social media showed expensive vacations, designer clothes, and lavish gifts to Brianna, all inconsistent with his actual income. Next, I looked into my parents' finances, something I'd never thought to do before. My father's retirement account statements had occasionally been mailed to my address by mistake, as we shared the same name. I had always forwarded them unopened, respecting his privacy. Now I searched my email for the digital copies of those forwarded statements. What I found was alarming. My parents had withdrawn substantial sums from their retirement accounts over the past few years, incurring hefty penalties in the process. The pattern of withdrawals corresponded with major events in Brianna's life: a down payment on her condo, the startup costs for her failed yoga studio, and most recently her wedding. The picture becoming clearer, I reached out to a college friend who now worked in the mortgage industry. Without mentioning names, I described Brianna and James's financial situation as I understood it, and asked how likely they were to qualify for a mortgage on a property similar to my penthouse. "Not a chance," was his blunt assessment. With that debt-to-income ratio and his unstable employment history, no bank would touch them, especially in the current market. Everything suddenly made sense. My family wasn't just being entitled and inconsiderate, they were desperate. Brianna and James had created an illusion of wealth and success that they couldn't sustain. My parents had jeopardized their retirement to maintain this facade, and now they all saw my penthouse as the solution to their problems. Armed with this knowledge, I contacted a financial advisor recommended by Danielle. Patricia Bennett was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who specialized in helping clients protect their assets. "Based on what you've told me," Patricia said during our consultation, "your family has demonstrated a pattern of financial exploitation. If you want to protect yourself going forward, we need to create clear legal and financial boundaries." Together, we developed a comprehensive plan. First, I would create a detailed record of all the money I had contributed to Brianna's wedding and other expenses over the years. Next, I would consult with an attorney about establishing legal protections for my assets. Finally, I would prepare a formal statement of boundaries to present to my family. The next week, I met with Robert Michaels, an attorney specializing in family law. He listened carefully to my situation, occasionally making notes. "Unfortunately, what you're describing is not uncommon," he said when I finished. "Family financial exploitation often goes unaddressed because of emotional entanglements. But there are steps we can take to protect you." Robert recommended creating a trust for my major assets, including my penthouse. While I would maintain control and enjoyment of the property, the trust would include specific provisions that would make it nearly impossible for family members to claim any entitlement to it. Additionally, he advised I suggest drafting a formal cease and desist letter regarding financial requests. While not legally binding in the traditional sense, it establishes a clear record of your boundaries should any issues arise in the future. As these legal protections took shape, I also worked on reorganizing my finances. I closed joint accounts I'd maintained for convenience, removed my parents as emergency contacts on various accounts, and updated my will to ensure my assets would be distributed according to my wishes, not family pressure. Throughout this process, my phone continued to fill with messages from my family. The tone had shifted from accusatory to conciliatory, though still with no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. "We miss you, Amanda," my mother texted. "Let's put this unfortunate incident behind us." "Brianna and James are back from their honeymoon," my father wrote. "They've been asking about you. Time to mend fences, don't you think?" I didn't respond to any of these overtures. Instead, I focused on completing my preparations. By the end of the month, I had first compiled documentation of over $70,000 in unreciprocated financial support I'd provided to my family over the years. Second, established a trust protecting my major assets with specific provisions regarding family claims. Third, reorganized my finances to eliminate any vulnerability to manipulation. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, drafted a clear statement of boundaries with the help of Dr. Winters. The final piece fell into place when my research into the Blackwood family finances yielded an interesting discovery. James's father had recently announced a new hotel development in Manhattan, not far from my penthouse. Public records showed they were struggling to secure adequate financing, which explained their sudden interest in my property and its prime location. With all the pieces in place, I was ready to confront my family. Not in anger or for petty revenge, but with clarity and firm boundaries that would forever change our relationship. Michael, who had supported me throughout this process, expressed concern about potential fallout. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked as we discussed my plans. "They might cut you off completely." I considered his question carefully. "I think I'm prepared for that possibility," I said finally. "But I don't think that's what will happen. They need me more than I need them. And it's time they recognize that." With everything in place, I sent a carefully worded email to my parents and Brianna inviting them to dinner at an upscale restaurant in Boston the following weekend. "I think it's time we talked," I wrote simply. Their responses came quickly, all expressing relief that I was finally coming to my senses. Little did they know that the dinner would mark not a return to our old patterns but the establishment of a new order entirely. As I prepared to travel to Boston, I felt none of the anxiety that had accompanied previous family encounters. For the first time in my life, I was approaching my family from a position of power and clarity, not obligation and guilt. Whatever happened at that dinner would be on my terms, not theirs. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change our family forever. Not out of malice, but out of necessity. Not for revenge, but for respect. It was time my family learned that their golden goose was about to stop laying eggs. The restaurant I selected for our family meeting was Sorellina, an upscale Italian establishment in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood. I chose it deliberately for its sophisticated atmosphere and private dining options. This conversation required both dignity and discretion. I arrived 20 minutes early to ensure everything was arranged according to my specifications. The private dining room I had reserved offered a perfect balance of intimacy and formality. A round table for 5 was set with fine china and crystal, an elegant but neutral setting for what would undoubtedly be a tense encounter. "Is everything to your satisfaction, Miss Wilson?" the maitre d' inquired as he showed me to the room. "Perfect, thank you," I replied, placing my leather portfolio on the table at what would be my seat. Inside were the documents I had prepared over the past month, financial records, legal notifications, and my written statement of boundaries. Michael arrived next, squeezing my hand supportively before taking his seat beside mine. "You've got this," he whispered. "Remember, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just establishing boundaries that should have existed all along." I nodded, drawing strength from his presence. I had specifically requested that he attend despite my mother's text, suggesting this should be just family. Michael was my family now in all the ways that mattered. At precisely 7 o'clock, the maitre d' escorted my parents and Brianna into the room. James trailed behind them, looking uncomfortable, but determined to present a united front with his new wife. "Amanda, darling," my mother exclaimed, with forced brightness, leaning in to kiss my cheek as if she hadn't slapped it just weeks before. "It's so good to see you. We've been worried." "Hello, Mother," I replied coolly, accepting the kiss without returning it. Please everyone have a seat. As they settled around the table, I noted their appearances. My mother wore an expensive new dress I'd never seen before. My father sported a Rolex that looked suspiciously new, and Brianna's diamond earrings caught the light with every movement of her head. The trappings of wealth remained a priority, even as their financial foundation crumbled beneath them. I took the liberty of ordering wine, I said, gesturing to the server who began pouring a vintage Barolo into the crystal glasses. I thought we could use it for this conversation. Always the efficient one, my father chuckled, attempting joviality. Though I must say this all seems rather formal for a family dinner. I waited until everyone had been served wine and the server had left before responding. This isn't just a family dinner, I said evenly. This is a meeting to discuss the future of our relationship. The table fell silent. My mother took a large sip of her wine while Brianna glanced nervously at James. Amanda, my mother began hesitantly, if this is about what happened at the wedding, we're prepared to put that behind us. Emotions were running high, things were said, actions were taken that perhaps shouldn't have been. You mean when you slapped me across the face in front of 300 people because I wouldn't give Brianna my home? I asked, my voice level but pointed. My mother flushed. That was unfortunate, but you have to understand you were being very difficult at a very stressful time. I think we should focus on moving forward, my father interjected smoothly. Family disagreements happen. The important thing is that we're all here now, ready to work things out. I took a sip of my wine, savoring the moment. Yes, let's talk about moving forward. But first, I think we need to acknowledge how we got here. Opening my portfolio, I removed the first document, a detailed spreadsheet of every financial contribution I had made to Brianna and my parents over the past decade. I slid it to the center of the table. Over the past 10 years, I have provided $73,422 in unreciprocated financial support to this family, I stated calmly. This includes wedding expenses, bailouts for Brianna's failed business ventures, and various emergency loans that were never repaid. My father picked up the spreadsheet, his expression darkening as he scanned the figures. You've been keeping a ledger of everything you've given us. That's rather cold, Amanda. Not until recently, I replied. But when you demanded that I give up my home, I became curious about the pattern of financial expectations in this family. So I went back through my records. Next, I removed a folder containing printouts of my research into the Blackwood family finances. I also became curious about why a family supposedly as wealthy as the Blackwoods would need my penthouse. The answer was illuminating. James stiffened visibly. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything, James. I'm stating facts. Your family's hotel chain is over-leveraged. The new development in Manhattan is struggling to secure financing. And you personally are carrying significant debt that makes it virtually impossible for you to qualify for a mortgage on a property like mine. Brianna's face crumpled. How dare you investigate my husband's family? That's invasive and cruel. Is it? I countered. More invasive than demanding I surrender my home. More cruel than having our mother slap me in public when I refused. I turned to my parents. And then there's your financial situation. The withdrawals from retirement accounts, the new credit cards, the second mortgage on the house. All to maintain appearances and support Brianna's lifestyle. My mother's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. Where are you getting this information? This is private family business. Most of it is public record, I replied. The rest became my business when you tried to solve your financial problems by taking my property. The server returned to take our dinner orders, creating a brief respite from the tension. No one had much appetite, but we all ordered nonetheless, maintaining the pretense of a normal family dinner. Once we were alone again, I continued. I've spent the past month consulting with financial advisors and attorneys. I've made some decisions about our relationship going forward. From my portfolio, I extracted the legal documents prepared by Robert. First, I've established a trust for my major assets, including my penthouse. This trust includes specific provisions regarding family claims. In simple terms, none of you can ever have any legal claim to my property regardless of circumstances. You got a lawyer involved, my father asked incredulously. Against your own family? To protect myself from my own family, I corrected. And yes, I've also prepared a formal cease and desist regarding financial requests. From this point forward, I will not provide financial support of any kind to any of you. Brianna, who had been silently fuming, finally erupted. So that's your revenge, cutting us off financially when you know we need help, when you have more than enough to share. I looked at my sister, seeing clearly for the first time the entitled woman she had become. This isn't revenge, Brianna. It's boundaries. And yes, I do have enough for myself. I worked for it. I sacrificed for it. I earned it. None of which obligates me to give it to you. We're your family, my mother insisted, tears forming in her eyes. Family helps family. Funny how that principle only seems to flow in one direction, I observed. But I'm not heartless. I do have something to offer you. I removed the final item from my portfolio, a gift certificate for 6 sessions with a respected financial advisor. This is Patricia Bennett's contact information. She specializes in debt management and financial recovery. I've prepaid for 6 sessions. She can help you develop a sustainable financial plan that doesn't rely on exploiting me. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother stared at the gift certificate as if it were a snake about to strike. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Brianna looked as though she might throw her wine in my face. It was James who broke the silence. We're in trouble, he admitted, quietly ignoring Brianna's gasp of betrayal. The wedding put us over the edge. My family's business isn't what it used to be. We've been keeping up appearances, but the reality is, we're drowning in debt. James, Brianna hissed. You can't just tell her that. Why not, he asked tiredly. She already knows, and I'm tired of pretending. My father sighed heavily. It's true. We've overextended ourselves trying to give Brianna the wedding she deserved, the life she deserves. We hoped you might help Amanda. You've always been the responsible one, the successful one. And that success made me a target, I said. My hard work became a resource for you to exploit, rather than an achievement to celebrate. The server returned with our meals, but no one made a move to eat. The pretense of a normal dinner had evaporated entirely. So what happens now? My mother asked, her voice small. You just cut us off, abandon your family when we need you most. I'm not abandoning anyone, I replied firmly. I'm establishing boundaries. You are all adults capable of solving your own problems. I'm offering you the tools to do so with the financial advisor. What you choose to do with that offer is up to you. And if we don't accept your terms, my father challenged. If we need more than just advice. I met his gaze steadily. Then you'll need to find it elsewhere. My decision is final. Brianna, who had been quietly seething, suddenly burst into tears. This isn't fair, we're supposed to be a family. Families help each other. Yes, they do, I agreed. But not by demanding sacrifice from one member to support the poor choices of another. That's not family. That's parasitism. My blunt assessment hung in the air, harsh but undeniably accurate. Around us, diners at nearby tables were beginning to take notice of our tense conversation, despite the relative privacy of our location. Lower your voice, Brianna, my mother urged, always conscious of appearances. People are staring. That concern for how things looked, rather than how they actually were, struck me as the perfect encapsulation of our family dynamic. Image over substance, appearance over reality. I think we're done here, I said, closing my portfolio and signaling for the check. I've said what I needed to say and provided the information you need to move forward. So that's it, my father asked incredulously. Years of family relationship reduced to a business transaction. You're the ones who treated our relationship as transactional, I pointed out. I'm just making the terms explicit. As the waiter brought the check, I handed over my credit card without hesitation. This meal is on me. Consider it a parting gift. I stood, Michael rising beside me. I wish you all well, genuinely. I hope you'll take advantage of the financial advisor. She's excellent at helping people rebuild from difficult situations. My mother reached for my hand as I prepared to leave. Amanda, please, We're still your family. Don't do this. I looked down at her, seeing not the intimidating figure of my childhood, but a woman who had made poor choices and was now facing the consequences. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm simply stopping what was being done to me. There's a difference. With that, Michael and I walked out of the restaurant, leaving my stunned family sitting around a table of untouched food. As we stepped into the cool evening air, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself without compromise or apology. Are you okay? Michael asked as we walked to our car. I considered the question carefully. Not entirely, I admitted, but I will be. For the first time in a long time, I think I actually will be. That night, back in my hotel room, I slept more peacefully than I had in weeks. The confrontation had been difficult, even painful, but necessary. I had set the boundaries that would define our relationship moving forward, not out of malice, but out of self-respect. My penthouse would remain mine, as would the life I had built for myself. Whether my family chose to accept this new reality remained to be seen, but their acceptance was no longer required for my peace of mind. I had silenced their demands not with cruelty but with clarity and consequence. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized that true revenge wasn't about hurting those who had hurt me. It was about reclaiming my power and refusing to be victimized any longer. It was about saying no and meaning it, consequences be damned. It was in the end about freedom. 3 months passed before I heard from any member of my family. Those months were both challenging and liberating as I adjusted to my new reality. The absence of constant demands and guilt trips created a strange vacuum in my life, one that I gradually filled with healthier relationships and pursuits. My first priority was continuing my work with Dr. Winters. Our weekly sessions helped me process the complex emotions surrounding my family confrontation, the lingering guilt, the unexpected grief, and the empowering sense of liberation. What you're experiencing is very normal, she assured me during one particularly difficult session. Even when relationships are unhealthy, ending or changing them significantly still involves a grieving process. I found unexpected solace in a support group for adult children of manipulative parents. Hearing others share stories that mirrored my own experiences was validating in a way individual therapy couldn't quite achieve. These strangers understood the unique pain of having your achievements weaponized against you, of being valued for what you could provide rather than who you were. My mother used to introduce me as her ATM at family gatherings, shared one woman in the group. She thought it was funny. I thought it was normal until I was 30. My parents remortgaged their house for my brother's third failed business venture, another member recounted. Then, got angry when I wouldn't do the same with my condo. Hearing these stories helped me understand that my experience wasn't unique or my fault. The pattern of golden child versus scapegoat played out in countless families, with variations but recognizable themes. Meanwhile, my relationship with Michael deepened. Having witnessed my stand against my family, he understood me in ways no previous partner ever had. Our conversations became more authentic, our connection stronger. He had seen me at my most vulnerable and most powerful, and had supported me through both. I'm proud of you, he told me one evening, as we sat on my penthouse balcony watching the sunset over Central Park. What you did took incredible courage. Sometimes I still wonder if I did the right thing, I admitted. If there was another way. They gave you no choice, he reminded me gently. You tried reasoning with them. You tried compromise. They wouldn't accept anything less than complete capitulation. He was right, of course. I had spent years accommodating their demands, making sacrifices, and receiving nothing in return. The confrontation hadn't been my first choice, but my last resort. Professionally, I threw myself into my work with renewed focus and creativity. Freed from the constant emotional drain of my family's demands, I found I had more energy for innovative projects and leadership opportunities. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I was offered a partnership at my architectural firm, a career milestone I had been working toward for years. The night I received the news, I realized I had no one to call from my family to share it with. That realization stung, but less than it once would have. Instead, I celebrated with Michael, my colleagues, and the genuine friends who had supported me throughout my journey. As for my family, I learned through mutual acquaintances that they had taken different paths in the aftermath of our confrontation. My parents, facing financial reality for perhaps the first time, had downsized from their large suburban home to a more modest condominium. My father had postponed his retirement plans and taken on consulting work to supplement their income. Brianna and James had abandoned their search for luxury housing and instead moved into a reasonably priced apartment in a less fashionable neighborhood. According to gossip from family friends, Brianna had taken a job as an administrative assistant at a law firm, her first steady employment in years. Most surprisingly, I learned that all four of them had actually started seeing Patricia Bennett, the financial advisor I had recommended. This unexpected development gave me hope that perhaps some genuine change might be possible. The first direct contact came in the form of an email from Brianna, 3 months and 2 days after our confrontation at Soralina. "Amanda," she wrote, "I've been trying to figure out what to say to you for months. Nothing seems adequate. James and I have been working with the financial advisor you recommended. It's been eye-opening and honestly pretty humiliating to realize how irresponsible we've been. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I'm starting to understand why you did what you did. When you're ready, I'd like to talk. On your terms." I read the email several times, searching for the manipulative undertones I had grown accustomed to detecting in communications from my family. Finding none, I replied with cautious openness, agreeing to a phone call the following week. That call was awkward but surprisingly genuine. Brianna spoke without her usual dramatic flair, acknowledging for the first time the pattern of favoritism and exploitation that had characterized our family dynamic. "I never saw it before," she admitted. "I always thought I was entitled to help because I was the younger one, the one who needed more support. I never considered how unfair that was to you." "It wasn't your fault," I said, surprising myself, with the realization that I meant it. "You were a child when this dynamic was established. We were both playing roles assigned to us by our parents." Maybe she conceded. But I'm an adult now. I should have seen it sooner. The conversation wasn't a magical fix for years of hurt, but it was a start. We agreed to proceed cautiously, rebuilding our relationship on more equal footing. My parents proved more resistant to change. My father sent a formal email acknowledging that things got out of hand but stopping short of a genuine apology. My mother remained silent for nearly 5 months before reaching out through my father to suggest a family dinner. That dinner, held at a modest restaurant rather than the upscale setting of our confrontation, was tense but civil. My parents seemed smaller, somehow less intimidating than the figures who had loomed so large in my life. "We've been attending some counseling sessions," my father announced awkwardly over appetizers. "Part of the financial recovery program Patricia recommended." "It's been illuminating," my mother added, her voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. "We've had to examine some patterns in our family that weren't healthy." "I'm glad to hear that," I replied sincerely. "That takes courage." The conversation remained superficial, but the dynamics had shifted noticeably. My parents addressed me with a new respect, asking about my work with genuine interest rather than dismissive commentary. When the check came, my father reached for it without hesitation. "Please," he said when I offered to split it. "This is on us." It was a small gesture but symbolically significant. For perhaps the first time in our adult relationship, they were giving rather than taking. As the months passed, our family began the slow, imperfect process of rebuilding. There were setbacks and old patterns occasionally resurfaced, but each time I enforced my boundaries calmly and consistently. Gradually, a new family dynamic emerged, one based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Brianna and I developed a more authentic, sisterly relationship, meeting monthly for brunch and talking openly about our shared past and separate futures. She had found unexpected satisfaction in her steady job and more modest lifestyle. "I actually sleep better at night," she confessed during one of our brunches, "not worrying about keeping up appearances or how we'll pay next month's credit card bill." My parents adjusted more slowly, but made genuine progress. My mother's tendency to criticize my choices diminished, replaced by tentative questions about my life and work. My father, stripped of his patriarchal authority, revealed a dry sense of humor I had never appreciated before. 1 year after the wedding that had catalyzed everything, we gathered for a small dinner at my penthouse. As we sat around my dining table, I looked at these familiar faces now arranged in a new configuration of relationship and understanding. "I'd like to propose a toast," I said, raising my glass. "To growth and second chances." "And to boundaries," Michael added with a knowing smile, squeezing my hand under the table. "To boundaries," my family echoed the word, no longer a threat, but a foundation for healthier connection. Later, after they had left and Michael and I were cleaning up, he asked me a question that gave me pause. "Do you ever regret it, standing up to them the way you did?" I considered the question carefully. "No," I said finally. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret the years I spent trying to earn their approval through sacrifice. But I don't regret finding my voice and using it. The journey had been painful but necessary. I had learned that true family supports each other's growth rather than exploiting each other's vulnerabilities. I had discovered that setting boundaries isn't selfish but essential for genuine relationship. Most importantly, I had found that standing up for myself didn't mean losing my family but redefining what family meant on healthier terms. For anyone watching who might be struggling with similar family dynamics, remember that you deserve respect. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for your well-being and for creating authentic relationships. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with loved ones? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to say no.